Disclaimer, though I have tried to handwrite and draw for years, I do suck at it still. I don't know if I have a disability or something. My handwriting has been this way since I started school. I can't do anything about it unfortunately. I may revisit this video in the future with a different style, maybe if I can figure out how to be better at everything. So, don't expect masterpieces. These are literally drawings of a 6-year-old. What matters is the message conveyed, and not necessarily the quality. There are a lot of misconceptions about veganism as well as misinformation. The majority of this information happens to be the backquote I heard it in a video once kind of information, which even though I'm guilty of this, is not a good mentality to have. If you're going to have serious discussions or debates about veganism, or any subject for that matter, because these do apply to that, you need to be aware of critical thinking, and have an understanding of what you're arguing against. What prompted me to make this was seeing a lot of videos that misinformed people on veganism, as well as vegan lifestyles. Anyway, here's the mistakes non-vegans make when discussing veganism, animal rights, and plant-based diets. 1. Not knowing the definition of veganism. This is the most common and most important one. Veganism as defined by the Vegan Society is a way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of, and cruelty to, animals for food, clothing or any other purpose. You can't debate a topic without knowing what it's about. 2. Using the wrong terms. With some of you no doubt confused by the first point, you must also know there are terms to describe the types of vegans. A vegan diet, or plant-based diet, refers to diet. You can replace diet with lifestyle. An ethical vegan is someone who lives a vegan lifestyle via the principle of ethics. To call yourself vegan is foolish and incorrect, because a vegan just refers to lifestyle of not consuming animal products, be it food or clothing. With the added terms, it makes it easier to understand. For example, I'm an ethical vegan. I believe animals should not be exploited for any purpose. 3. Assuming vegans don't like the taste of meat. This is entirely false. The common misconception about vegans is that they are brought up vegan, which again is false. Then the non-vegan assumes the vegan has never tasted meat. Again, false. Over 90% of vegans you meet will say they like the taste of meat, although that's only if they are honest. Some haven't tried meat. But please keep in mind, they don't dislike the taste of meat, they actually like it. I say they, because I was never a fan of meat. I only like the seasonings on it, which for those unaware, is where meat gets most of its flavor. The reason why vegans consume plant-based products that imitate animal products is so they don't have to sacrifice pleasure and an animal. Whether it's the taste of food, or the feeling of leather or fur, there's a plant-based version of it all. 4. Assuming every vegan is the same. Whilst I agree with the consensus that vegans are angry, you also need to understand why. Just throwing that out there. But it is again false to assume every vegan is the same. There are farmers who claim vegans don't know what farming is, even though the farmer would rather insult/attack vegans than provide the information they are missing, which sounds like hypocrisy to me. Not every vegan is the same. Believe it or not, there are vegan furries. I'm one. 5. Using anecdotes. When debating a plant-based diet or lifestyle, you must take into consideration this. Meat made me ill and almost killed me. I might have undercooked it, but it was definitely the diet. You realize how stupid this sounds, right? This is why you don't use anecdotes to back your claims. You use studies, unbiased and unfunded if possible, to prove your claim. Studies will bring you closer to the truth. It's like the gumball machine effect. The more people you get to predict the amount of gumballs in the machine, the more likely you'll find out how much is in there, based on the average numbers. This is exactly how a study works. It pinpoints results with high accuracy using effective and controlled methods of studying. how exactly they reach the conclusion. 6. Trying to find holes. Stop trying to find holes in veganism. Whilst I agree there are no arguments against veganism, there are some against living the lifestyle, which is separate from veganism. This is why you will fail to find holes, whether it's to do with a nutritional claim, or maybe even a psychological health problem. None of them have anything to do with veganism, or ethical vegans for that matter. There's also the case where a vegan cannot be perfect. For example, living in a suburban area where the only access to vegan foods is imported fruits and vegetables. That's one place where somebody can still be vegan and has to against what they believe in for survival. Although, this does require a strong egoist mindset, meaning you have to be selfish or value your life more than others. 7. Accusations against vegans. I see in the fitness side of YouTube, there's a lot of back and forth between vegans and non-vegans. Whilst the vegans themselves stand their ground pretty well citing studies, the non-vegans do terrible. The non-vegans often accuse vegan or plant-based athletes of using steroids or performance-enhancing drugs. You need evidence to support these claims. To throw in my own thoughts on this, how do we know the non-vegans are not on steroids? It's such a stupid claim to make. This also applies to things like sexual allegations. I have seen people in the vegan community try to claim that vegans sexually abuse them, yet fail to provide evidence of such claims. As horrid as it sounds to say that and let someone potentially get away from it, we can't have a guilty until proven innocent mindset due to the issues that arise around that, starting from cancel culture to someone's likely suicide. It's dangerous. You also need to report it to the police, not the internet. Which is why this cancel culture shit is annoying and unnecessary. I pretty much shut that horrible trend down in a couple of sentences. 8. Propaganda claim. I see this thrown around a lot because non-vegans can't say anything different. What's kinda funny is you can call anything propaganda. Black rights, LGBTQ+ rights. As long as it displays a message, it's apparently political. But wait, there's nothing wrong with those, is there? If you think there's nothing wrong with it, then why call anything propaganda? No. My question wouldn't be what is and isn't propaganda. It would be, what is the message? You can throw around silly claims all you want. The point is, if the message is right or wrong, that should be the point of discussion, not what it is. I also think in the world wars where they used propaganda, they were right to do so. Because it has paved the way for a more peaceful future, where we no longer live in fear of war, of families being murdered. The cause it promoted was a good thing, if I hadn't made that obvious, because it paved way for something that was right. It ended a war, it stopped wars. It was a sacrifice, but a worthwhile sacrifice. Those who lost their lives will never be forgotten. 9. Being dishonest. It isn't hard, guys. I've debated probably 3 or 4 non-vegans online about veganism and animal rights. Each one, dishonesty. I ask them a question, and they avoid it. Please stop avoiding questions, and stop being dishonest. You can't make change, let alone convince people you're right, by being dishonest. This also applies to me. If and when the day comes, where there is a strong argument against veganism or animal rights, then I'll admit defeat. It's all over. Until then, I won't change. 10. Criticizing the person, and not the arguments. A good example of this is the media vs X activist. For some reason, something that happened in the past means you're a bad person, which is really ironic coming from media outlets who were wrong in the past, did questionable things, as well as the people within them being suspicious. This is however a terrible way of arguing, as it avoids the topic and becomes about something else entirely. Your criticisms should be directed at the topic and not the person, because you will always fail to argue if you focus on the individual. And because society are full of ignorant and violent people, I want to say this to any person who has had a past in doing immoral things. You're not doomed to offend again. Don't listen to the people who are very clearly ignorant and wrong about these topics. Doesn't matter who you are. Pedophile, murderer, rapist. The past may never change, but the present can. 11. Vegan agenda? Again, this is blatant hypocrisy and mindlessness. And a strawman. What is a vegan agenda? Is the agenda right or wrong? If so, why? Case closed. 12. Stop using nitpicking as an argument. This is easily debunked. First of all, if vegans are nitpicking their facts, what are you doing then? If you're trying to find studies or arguments that are against a plant-based lifestyle or for carnism, then you're no different. Like, come on. Second, if you can prove vegans are nitpicking, why then aren't you going to farms and slaughterhouses to capture footage that isn't nitpicked? On that topic, why isn't it recorded to begin with? I thought people had high animal welfare standards. Yet, we don't document their well-being via camera footage of their own. Thirdly, nitpicking can be used to debunk anything. It isn't really an argument, because it ends up being circular. You can say the studies around cigarettes causing cancer are nitpicked. Doesn't mean cigarettes are good or bad. 13. Don't use insults. Using insults just means you have no argument. That's literally it. Don't use insults. They're pointless. I bring this up as an important point, because those sharp enough to spot the flaws in a debate will. All these insults do is muddy the waters and contribute nothing to the conversation. This applies to both sides. 14. Carnists, meat isn't actually tasty. So, when people talk about meat, even vegans to an extent, they make the flaw of saying meat and not processed meats. The difference is clear as day. Meat implies no tampering, whereas processed means tampering. So when you say meat is tasty, you're either lying or you're mistaken, because the processed meat is actually the tastier option, due to all the seasonings added to it. Don't believe me? Find the meat you were going to have today, read the ingredients. Please keep these in mind the next time you discuss veganism. Try not to make these common mistakes. Also, to briefly sum up mistakes vegans do, I'll do that here too. Using anecdotes. I see vegans sometimes also use anecdotes to say that a vegan diet saved them or something, which is a weak form of arguing due to anecdotes always being hard to prove, not just for being true, but how it correlates with the scientific literature, including studies. Industry funding is irrelevant. Look at how they got to the conclusion, and whether the studies or reviews have reached a conclusion logically and fairly. Whilst you can say every funded study has a bias, it is however circular, because again, anything can be biased by your definition. It's irrelevant. Just look at the literature and see how they controlled it and how it concluded. Stop saying legality isn't morality. The correct term is legality, isn't always morality. Some laws are created based on morality, and whilst we agree some aren't, we also have to remember that the opposite is true. Some laws are created on untruths and end up either being moral or immoral. It's basically accidentally moral, if that's somehow a thing. Answer questions whenever you can. In a lot of debates, I see a lack of answering questions from both sides. You really need to answer questions, because you come off as dishonest or not listening, or pushy, if you don't answer. The same is true for the other debaters. Be honest. If someone asks you if you like the taste of meat, if you do, say yes. If you don't, say no. There is no shame in being honest. It also helps establish what kind of person you are. Don't use insults. Again, you kinda display that you have no arguments if you choose to use insults. While I think you can call people animal abusers for purchasing animal products, you can't really call them retards or whatever words young people use nowadays. I believe it's important to be honest and truthful in conversations. Doesn't matter what it is, just being honest and truthful is as effective as the opposite.